Oh, we've got a couple of people joining already. Just going to give it, a couple of minutes. We've got quite a few people registered today, so we'll let those guys filter in. Welcome to those people who are joining us today. We're just going to give it another minute or so. So we've still got people joining us at the minute, so we'll give it a minute or so and aim to kick off probably about 10:02, 10:03, somewhere around there. Welcome to those more people joining us. Welcome, everyone. Welcome all, welcome all. Still got a few people entering. Just going to give it a fraction longer. Right. I think we've got quite a lot to cover this morning, so I think I'm going to kick off. A couple more people may be joining, but we'll kick off. So look, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us in the latest in the series of Hayward Wright webinars. We've put this series of educational webinars together for clients, contacts, potential clients, introducers, where we're kind of trying to cover different business topics away from just accountancy stuff, to kind of support people and give insights into different areas of business. And I'm so pleased today to be joined by a brilliant panel of experts in this field in sustainability. First up, we're going to hear from Alan Stenson, CEO and founder of Neutral Carbon Zone. Alan's been a sustainability entrepreneur for the past 18 years. He's been lucky enough to work with many early adopters and industry leaders, and now heads up Neutral Carbon Zone with an exceptional team of talented colleagues. Following that, we're going to hear from Jason at Lloyds Bank, relationship manager and, importantly, Midlands sustainability champion for Lloyds Banking Group. Jason's worked with SMEs across the Midlands, championing sustainability, where he aims to build meaningful long-term relationships with clients, enabling them to reach their business aspirations. Then finally, we're going to have a bit of a discussion session with Paul Ashton, CEO at Birkin Group. Birkin Group is an award-winning smart technology facility services business, and his focus is firmly on the future of cleaning, and particularly the role that technology will play in reducing environmental impact. And I think that'll be a really insightful session. And then towards the end of the hour, we'll bring everyone back together and do a bit of a Q&A session. So if you've got questions from the floor, please feel free to use the Q&A box within the Zoom facility, and we'll pick those up and feed those through to the guys. So first of all, can I pass over to you, Alan?
Thanks, Alistair. Thanks ever so much. Great to see everyone today. As Alistair said, we've got a lot to cover, so I'll try and rattle through this as quickly as possible. But the first point, why take action now? We're seeing that net zero needs to be achieved by 2050, if not earlier. And I think it's important to refresh ourselves on the actual extent of the issue. Change is happening. It's real. We're seeing significant changes in sea levels, increased weather extremes, risks to global food security, loss of wildlife. And in fact, according to the UN Global Risks Report, 6 of the top 10 risks that we will face over the next decade are all climate change related. 6 of the top 10. So we're quite literally on a path that can't continue in the way that it is. And to put some context to that, we're currently running at a rate of carbon intensity that is quite literally more than 3 times the level that it needs to be in order for us to even be able to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. So it's a very serious issue, but what can we do about it? So if you cast your minds back, one of the very few positives that actually came out of the horrendous experience that was COVID was that reduction in emissions was actually possible. It happened, we saw it. At its peak, we actually recorded a drop of 17% in global emissions, with actually some individual countries dropping by up to 27%. And these are levels that are quite literally unprecedented. We haven't seen this since 2006. 43% of reduction came from a reduction in land transport. Another 43% came from the collaborative or collective emissions associated with industry and power. And then a further 12% came from aviation. So whilst we don't want to have a lockdown ever again, this does actually show us that change is possible. And if we do change what we do, then limiting global warming is very real and it's very possible. There's also now thankfully, a very rapid growing movement for responsible business. Yes, big business clearly emits a lot, but the SME market is still actually responsible for approximately 40% of total business sector emissions. So we all play a very vital role in a global issue. Adopting more sustainable business practices, considering the cost of carbon in our business decisions, delivering greater environmental insight and support to our clients, and promoting a more collaborative approach to the issue means that we can all environmentally, socially, and commercially benefit whilst also reducing our risks. Could you just go on to that next slide now? Great. So we know we need to take action. And we know that it has to provide a very successful outcome. We have no choice. It's far too important. So how do we do that? What does a credible journey to net zero actually look like? So one thing that we do with every single client that's embarking on a journey to net zero, or indeed anyone that's realigning their journey to net zero, it's incredibly important to baseline. This actually provides a very strong insight. This means that an organization will understand not just what the number of their emissions are, the total figure, but the actual understanding of where those emissions are actually coming from, so that then they can make an informed decision and set strategic and appropriate targets for decarbonisation that actually meet the requirements and aspirations of that business. And those can actually also be monitored to track results on an ongoing basis. This also means that we can more effectively engage with our stakeholders and create a truly inclusive approach to achieving net zero, so that the process of integrating sustainability into the very fabric of the business becomes something that's actually supported by everyone. Everybody understands it. Being accountable is key. Following a best practice approach that is independently verified to ensure that a comprehensive and standards compliant process is being followed adds genuine credibility and ultimately a more successful outcome for your efforts. Having a clear and appropriate process to follow is extremely important. Once we capture, understand, report on the emissions that we can control, that's the first stage of an effective carbon management program. We then need to move on to the element that falls outside of our control, which is the supply chain, that second big aspect of carbon management program. And that's often the most challenging aspect for the vast majority of businesses, and also for most, the largest part of their footprint. It's also what we're seeing as what's driving the increase in expectations on suppliers to provide more detail to their clients. A supply chain compliance program is the best way to establish, monitor, and ultimately influence the reduction of emissions, which has traditionally been the most inaccessible area of our footprint. When we buy from our suppliers, it's our emissions. So being able to establish the impact of those transactions is key to reducing your footprint. Next slide, please. I think going on to the business opportunity, and this is what it tends to sort of boil back down to, because obviously over the last 18 years, you've probably imagined that I've seen quite a lot of change in the industry. 2006, knocking on people's doors to talk to them about the carbon footprint, and you just get a blank face and a question as to why do I need to do that? Oh, is it yet another thing to pay for, and so on. So I think now, thankfully, most people are certainly aware, or certainly becoming more aware of the significant commercial benefits that a lower carbon approach to business offers. I've been saying to most new customers from the very beginning, when you think emissions, think pound signs. So if you can reduce your emissions, you can reduce your costs. But it's also really important to understand that it's not about creating restriction or limiting activities. It's about doing things differently. We need to decouple carbon emissions from economic growth. Become as successful as possible, but just do it as efficiently as you possibly can. These days, we are seeing, we're fortunate enough to get involved in a lot of tenders, so we're seeing it at the front line. But these days, we're seeing a huge scoring being applied to ESG. 30+% becoming the norm. It's not just about the price anymore. We can all see the price of something because it's there on the bill. But what's the actual cost of doing business? If I award this contract to that supplier, how will that affect my carbon footprint? What is the social impact of that decision? What impact will this have on our business profile? And does it align with our net zero journey? These are the types of questions that are now being asked. And if your business is the one that can not only provide the best response, but also offer the insight and support that means that your clients are reducing their footprint and improving the success of their net zero journey simply by working with you, that makes you the most attractive option and takes your business from supplier to partner. And that really is the biggest and most impressive business opportunity that we're seeing. Thanks, Alistair.
Thank you, Alan. That was fantastic. Really interesting. And I love that kind of the talk on this last slide around that business opportunity and that connection to cost and seeing it as an overarching area. And this is something we talk to clients about on the financial front as well, is we can't look at these things in isolation. It has to be the whole plan. So thank you, Alan. Really, really appreciate that.
Pleasure.
Next, I'd love to pass over to Jason from Lloyds Bank.
Thanks, Alistair, and thanks for the opportunity to be here today and support the event. Yeah, just quickly give you a bit of an overview of what I'm going to be covering. So I thought it'd be good just to start, just to share a few of Lloyds Bank's commitments, really just to maybe help businesses if you're starting off on a journey, maybe some thought leadership about some places and ways to start, why sustainability matters, key challenges that we see SME businesses face, and then some support that's available for you. So yeah, if you can move to the next slide, please. So I guess for me, people might be thinking, why Lloyds have a focus around sustainability. And I think it's massive, really. I think, we believe that we have a real key role to play as one of the UK's largest banks, and really help support this change. I think, talking to a lot of my customers, a bit like Alan said, historically there's been so much information that's sort of come in when sustainability was, started being spoke about. And I think people are getting more used to sort of seeing it and discussing it now and understand the reasons why it's important. But I guess there might be some people on a journey today that, haven't actually started anything or don't know where to start. So I thought I'd just really try and highlight some of Lloyd's commitments. Now, don't get me wrong, we're a big corporate organisation, so this might be a little bit different to SME business, but just to give you a bit of an idea, really. So you'll see here there's a number of key areas that Lloyds have set aside as our commitments. I I think that the three ones that I'd sort of going to touch upon today, I think are around how we've recently started making a real drive to review our own operations. And I think this is something that any business can do. So we've been going through a real exercise over the last few years, looking at all of our office space. How can we become more energy efficient? Thinking about sort of how people travel to work. So, really thinking about the emissions, the outputs of that. We've also recently started looking at in 2019 it was we changed our sort of car scheme. So basically tried to think about the not just traveling to work but also sort of going out to see customers. So we've now got a colleague scheme which is all electric or hybrid vehicles, and this is something that we're really trying to push with our customers as well to help them along that element of the sort of decarbonisation. And then I guess the other point that this is something that's a real commitment that we're trying to do is around the green financing. So it's actually setting aside a significant pot of money essentially, where we're just really trying to focus on supporting businesses around that green financing. So if you can move to the next slide, please. Yeah. So why sustainability matters? I think this is quite a good question, and I think there's a few points really, and for me, I think mainly it's the right thing to do, for the future of the planet. But I think actually, if you think about business itself, I think one of the areas that I see is sort of risk mitigation as well. So, I think pre-pandemic, this was something I was seeing a lot of, and then it sort of went away when we had the pandemic. But it's definitely come back with a vengeance, like I said earlier, and people are really sort of at the forefront of their minds now. And I think the challenge for SME business that I see is at the moment they might not see where they sort of have a part to play. But I think it's thinking about that bigger picture and how they fit into maybe a supply chain. Bigger organisations have set out commitments, as I've just shown you, Lloyds Bank have done. And as time goes on and they get closer to these commitments, the organisations might start looking at their supply chains and seeing, how are they achieving their goals. And so I think the risk element is quite a big one for SME business to have a focus on, just so that you don't get left behind or get impacted by potentially not having or being able to evidence to your clients that you've got a sustainability sort of program. I think Alan mentioned efficiency improvement. So not only is that great for potential cost savings in the business, but I think it just really makes you sort of more lean. So I'm a manufacturing specialist at Lloyds Bank, so predominantly look after a manufacturing portfolio, and I think there's quite a nice link into manufacturing and sustainability, and I think that is a really key area for me around trying to be continuously improving. But yeah, sustainability definitely helps that. And then I think finally around this is I think changing that mindset, maybe not just thinking, oh, this is something else that we've got to do, thinking about it as how it can actually lead to new opportunities. So yeah, I think that's definitely something to consider. Next slide, please. I'm not going to run through every one of these, but this was just a report that I think Alistair will share at the end of the event. That Lloyds produced in 2022. So it was a report that we went out and surveyed SME business. And I thought I'd just share with you today just to make you feel, that you're not on your own. A lot of businesses will be in a similar situation. So this was just really a report that we conducted. And you can see there the question we asked was some of the key challenges that business face into around reaching net zero. And so going from the bottom, you'll see 16% said lack of access to professional advice and other guidance. So I guess this is why we're doing this today. Starting point, it's great that that's the lowest point. But yeah, there are, I suppose, a lot of information out there. It's just trying to work your way through what's going to be most pertinent to you. So maybe, yeah, hopefully today we'll be giving some sort of support around that. But I'll come on to some other areas shortly about some additional support available. This is one that actually I think resonates quite with me as well. Difficult to balance against competing issues. So 27% of people suggested that. So again, I think as an SME business, you've got so much on the plate and trying to manage, sort of running the day-to-day operations and thinking about obviously making money. But this is something that does need to be considered, for that future protection. And I mentioned on the previous slide around that risk mitigation. So I think that's an area to consider. And then last, you can see 43% are saying that the biggest challenge is around insufficient budgets and high costs. So again, understandable, there's sort of sustainable, probably going to be in a lot of change in business, and that could then obviously lead to costs. So hopefully in a minute, I'm just going to talk about some of the support that Lloyds can offer, and then other external opportunities and support that might be available to help with that. Next slide, please. Yeah, so just thought I'd share, this is obviously Lloyds Bank's view. There will be obviously maybe customers that don't bank with Lloyds today. So I'd sort of maybe consider, we're always open to talking to any customers, but you will have your own banks that might offer similar things. So it's worth exploring. But some of the areas that we've got available, and like I said, through other lenders might be available. So the CGFI funding, that's something that I mentioned at the start, where we're looking to actually support projects, and there's certain benefits to that. So potentially you can save arrangement fees or reduce margins if you can evidence that you're sort of got a new project and need some financing support. Green Fleet, again, referenced that at the start. So that's very much quite an easy one to think about the outputs and emissions in a business. Have you considered, the fleets and what's available for you around that? And then I think this is something that, again, Lloyds have got, but I think there will be other providers who offer similar things. But this is definitely, I think, a good area to consider. So around sort of like a carbon capture tool. So we've got a green buildings tool. Again, that can help just for you to start maybe assessing your own outputs, what changes you could make, etc., etc. And then, yeah, the bits around the thought leadership on there, I'm going to sort of share that with you because there are some really insightful reports that Lloyds have done. So hopefully we'll get that out to you at the end. And then the last slide, please. So yeah, not just around Lloyds Bank. So I said there'll be other support available for you. If you haven't already done this, you're thinking of projects, again, don't know where to go. I would definitely consider reaching out to the Worcestershire Growth Hub or any of the local LEPs. There are grant funds available. So in conjunction with either Lloyds Bank, your other lenders, if you're banked elsewhere, there definitely, there is support available. So I would definitely advise, if you haven't already, reach out to the local growth hub. And again, the slides are going to be shared, so there'll be relevant contacts on there for you to be able to reach out to the people needed. That's it, Alistair. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jason. Really, really appreciate that. And just to echo those points regarding that additional support that's available, we do, obviously I know we've got people on this webinar from all over the country, but particularly around the Worcestershire area, we've got fantastic links into Worcestershire Growth Hub. I was with one of the guys last week, so if there's any help we can offer through that, then please do feel free to reach out. Thank you again, Jason. So now we move on to more of a discussion area, and I'm going to invite Paul to the conversation. And Paul and I are just going to have a little bit of a chat around his journey and the Birkin Group's journey. Paul and Alan have worked together on this journey, and I thought it'd be really, really nice if we can just chat with Paul to get some insights and really understand the pros and the cons and the challenges that somebody who's actually gone through this journey has faced. So welcome, Paul. First, could I just ask you to kind of give a bit of a brief background to yourself and to the Birkin Group?
Yeah, sure, of course. I mean, I would say having still very much on the journey. I'd say this is one of those journeys that's still ever evolving. But anyway, look, if I go back to the start of when I kind of first acquired the business back in 2016, I'd left my kind of big corporate world to lead a business with purpose, and kind of wanted start off with this evangelical look around kind of creating my own company. But actually, you know what? It was kind of a real, when we actually sat down and started, you know, what does the journey look like? We started with the values, and it's amazing how your company values tie perfectly in with the ESG journey. And actually, we got the leadership together and said, right, okay, what are we about? How are we going to do business? And actually, when we came up with the values, it was more around, you know, when we thought it was around our employees, it was around the client service. And it's only as we've been on the ESG journey, you start realizing how much it all is kind of interwoven. So things like trust and integrity, you know, greenwashing, you know, statistics, data, actually understanding your impact, huge. You know, actually, where are you? Whether you're in a really good place or in a bad place, if you know where you are, you can do something about it. So for us, you know, when I bought the business, it was a really traditional cleaning company. You know, we had very much, you know, anyway, we'll come on to the kind of some of the things we did, but, you know, and then was around, we care, because we care about our employees, we care about our clients, but we also care about impact on the planet, you know, and Alan, you know, gave some fantastic statistics around kind of, this is real. This isn't, you know, we're not playing at this. We've got one shot really making a difference. You know, this idea around being genuine is another one of our values, because none of us are perfect. But actually, you know what? If you own it and you're accountable and you take action and you're trying to do the right thing, you know, and finally, we've got this kind of passion to be the best. And that was around how we would continually push things forwards. And that's exactly the same approach. Those principles, those foundations are exactly how we've, you know, kind of approached our business on the ESG journey. So if I go back to the start, what were some of those low-hanging fruits? You know, it was things like the vehicles. We were running 10-year-old 200,000 mile vans. And I don't want to get into life cycle analysis and all that sort of stuff, but just genuinely, they were off the road. They were costing us a fortune to repair. So we leased low emission vehicles. We started moving to the EV movement. And as that tech is getting more cost effective, certainly before COVID, but anyway, you know, that's allowed us to make a big difference in terms of our CO2, actually putting in tracking information around the vehicles to actually give insights as to how they're being driven. And again, that tech, you know, I was joking with you all before we started the call, 2016, when I bought the business, it feels like a different era. In my head, it was yesterday, but in reality, if I think about how things have moved forwards, things like our dear payroll manager who retired, Alan, not Alan Stenson, different person, but, you know, he'd print off an email, he'd tap on my door, and he'd go, Paul, I've just sent you this email, and he'd be waving a piece of paper at me. I'd be like, Alan, it's an email. You don't need to print it off. So I would say there is some cultural elements to this as well. And we've come a long, long way. In things like timesheets, we were printing off 900 timesheets, and managers were driving them to the office. So we've used technology to, you know, kind of bring in a time and attendance system that's digitalized in. It's meant that it's all at the, you know, fingertips, but it also means our employees are paid more accurately on time. So I think what I would say is it's been, you know, the concerns around cost shouldn't be a cost, because actually, if you get the right actions, they deliver you tangible benefits financially, but also allow you to do the right thing as well. So those were the kind of very much the early days of when I acquired the business.
Brilliant, thank you, Paul. And you've touched on it. And obviously, I've only kind of recently met Paul through this process, but I was having a look at your website, Paul, and it's very evident from the Birkin Group website that technology is kind of key to the business in its entirety. And the website talks a massive amount about technology, and I was particularly fascinated by the video which demonstrates the robotic window cleaner system that you've got, and, you know, if people should have a look at that. That's fantastic. And you've kind of touched upon it already, but how key was technology to the ESG part of your journey?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if we fast forward kind of 8 years later, it's kind of chalk and cheese, you know. And I guess the real turning point was when we engaged with was Ethical Nation, now Neutral Carbon Zone, in terms of actually understanding our data of where we were. And actually what opened our eyes to tech was seeing how tech was having an impact on ESG, but it was also making the business more profitable. So we're now at a place where, you know, the tech is having a huge impact. So okay, robotics, we've got 120 robots out cleaning every day. That's 120 less people that are traveling to and from work. You know, all it's got to do is undock itself from the off, you know, from its cupboard, take itself out and complete it. So there's a carbon saving there, but actually reliability. And, you know, we're in a time where labour rates are reducing. We're in a time where unemployment's very, very low. So the resource pool is getting smaller. Labour rates are going up. So we've been able to, I would say, introduce tech that hasn't had a negative impact. Where we have tech-led contracts, we reinvest 0.25% of profit back into the contract. So we will always pay London Living Wage on tech contracts. And actually, what's been really exciting is looking at some of the things you've just mentioned there, like the drone applications of waterproofing, which people would say, well, that's not traditional cleaning. Well, no, it's not, but it's a nice added value. It's an opportunity to increase our margins, but it's also an opportunity to try and help our clients with some of their bigger challenges, which is around, utility bills. So, we're working with schools in the Midlands where actually we're waterproofing their schools. These are, it's like a 7-month payback. We're talking 8% reduction in their carbon, in their utility bills. They're cooler in the summer, warmer in the winter. They're using less energy and they're saving money. So what we've tried to do is use technology to say, well, how do we differentiate ourselves from the competitors, from the more traditional outfits? We've made all these kind of operational improvements back of house. The tech is now for us is how we're really standing apart from our competitors. So sensor technology is allowing us to use our team more efficiently, more effectively. We're able to give insights to clients around, we work with a national, it's a global insurance company nationally. The insights that we are giving them now through sensor technology is actually allowing them to say, do we need that building? Do we not need that building? Why do I need to spend £3 million refurbishing that floor when actually I'm not getting full utilization of the other space? So we are saving them energy because they're not using as much space. We're also saving them money because they're not, when they're not, generating new materials. So it's huge. And I could talk about it for hours, but it's amazing how something which when I first bought the business, I didn't know anything around. And actually, one of my other roles is I'm the chairman for the CSSA, which is the Cleaning and Support Service Association. We represent well over 200, providers in the space. We're all in the same boat. No one's got all the answers. But what is really great to see is, we've got organisations such as Alan's who are guiding lights. They're there to support, they're there to help us on our journey of understanding where we are. And then I believe the onus is on us as CEOs, business owners, to make the right decisions and use that data wisely. But it isn't as scary as maybe I initially thought. It's probably my synopsis. And there's always opportunities. Yeah.
And a 7-month payback, we all love that.
Well, don't we all? Yeah, no, indeed. And it's real impact. So yeah, it's been really good to see.
One of the other things was, and we talked about this very, very briefly before we joined the seminar, Paul, was around you promote that you actively support your suppliers on a journey to net zero. And I think this comes back to kind of what Alan's touched upon about that supply chain, and Jason touched upon on that report where I think it was 33% of the respondents. What their challenge was around how do they control the stuff that is outside of their operations. Can you tell us a little bit more around that?
Yeah, so I think without a doubt, it's been our biggest challenge. We as a business, we made a decision where we want to try and support local businesses. We want to try and encourage them. And we've got, some fantastic suppliers we've been working with for well over 20 years. Now, we're all on this journey together. So what we've been doing is using our data to sit down with them and understand how they are feeding into that. And actually then spending the time with them, trying to encourage them. We've got supplier compliance now, and we're kind of up to about 86% now in terms of our supply chain is aligned to our metrics, and they are feeding in. So what is driving that is we're able to share this at all levels of our business. So someone who's a frontline cleaning operative on a contract understands the impact of them using water, using electricity, using chemicals, or not using chemicals, as the case may be. And actually, by giving them that voice and showing them how much of an impact they're having, it's huge. Our managers and the Lightfoot software that's included in the vehicles is helping change behaviour. And that's the sort of tech that is now being actually rolled out by a couple of our suppliers, because they've seen the data we're generating and they're going, wow, was it that easy? It's like, yes. And actually, they're seeing the impact that's coming off the back of it. So I would say, and we encourage this in the CSSA as well, but this sharing of information, it shouldn't be a dark art, and I think the more transparent we are with each other, I think the more we can help one another all move forwards as a collaborative. So that's certainly been our approach.
Brilliant. Thank you, Paul. I'm going to slowly bring. We're getting a couple of questions in from the floor, so I'm going to slowly start to bring Alan and Jason back into the conversation. But first, another question for you, Paul. And I'm going to give you a heads up, Alan. I'm going to come to you afterwards on the same question. Who should be responsible for sustainability in an owner-managed business? What's your feelings on this, Paul?
I've always had this mindset: the buck stops with me. So, you know, and actually, I don't think there's ever been more pressure as a CEO and a business owner to do the right thing. You know, it's no longer around what is the cheapest price. You know, when a client challenges you on the products you're supplying, on your buying, or your team, and actually, you know what? I'm really proud of how my team challenged the business, you know, around buying decisions. It's not just around what's the unit price anymore. So yeah, the buck stops with certainly the CEO or the owner. But actually, I would say by leading by example, I would say we are seeing great traction at all levels. And I think that the way in which you cascade that information down to the grassroots is so important, you know, and we've got people actually. In fact, one of our new ESG administrator was actually a frontline cleaning operative who was a supervisor who is now working in the ESG team. And, you know, for me, that just speaks volumes. You know, it speaks volumes about Yolanda's passion for the subject. You know, she was making a difference at a site level and has kind of come through the ranks to actually be able to kind of share that knowledge on a very tangible level. And that's helping us make sure that the way in which we communicate that type of information is relevant.
Brilliant. Thank you, Paul. Alan, could I ask you the same question and what you've seen with the clients that you're working with?
Yeah, I mean, it's Paul's right. I mean, the buck stops at the top, but the reality is there's only so much anyone at the top can do to make sure that ultimately it's a success. And that's where we talk about making sure it becomes part of the fabric of the business. So it becomes part of how you operate. It's not a tick box exercise to say, oh, look how green we are or how sustainable we are. That's how we work. And that's really the difference. And that takes a lot of effort. That takes everybody to buy in, and that's where collaboration is absolutely key. There's something known as a triple bottom line when it comes to business from a sustainability aspect, and it used to be about the commercial bottom line. Are we making money? The reality is you could be making lots of money, but if you're doing that in an environmentally or socially unacceptable way, you're not going to be making much money for much longer, because people won't want to buy from you, people won't want to work for you, and so on. So all three elements have to be strong in order for a business to be genuinely sustainable. And that takes a collaborative approach. Everybody needs to be understanding why it's important for them to take the action that they're taking. And the very top of a business can facilitate the opportunity and provide the education and the insight and make sure that people are involved and engaged so that everybody can be doing the right thing, because ultimately that's where we'll drive far more success.
Fantastic. And that's really interesting, actually, because you both touched upon it there. And from that kind of, the buck stops at the top, as it were. But how can leadership, and I might come to you on this, Jason, how can leadership kind of focus that culture of sustainability throughout the entire organisation? I just wonder, from your point of view, Jason, obviously working within a large corporate, what's Lloyds Bank done about trying to drive this ethos down through the whole team?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think firstly we've sort of set out the clear objectives of the organisation, and sort of why we want to do that, and then I think it's really just that education piece. So we can obviously buy into it as staff, and then we can sort of educate and support our clients, really. And I think it's really important to, I suppose it's a difficult one, isn't it? It's like we said earlier, it's just making people understand the reasons and try and help them on that journey. And I think as a bank, we touch a lot of clients, every day in not just normal banking terms. Lloyds Banking Group has got a massive plethora of partners that make up the organisation. So we'll be having these conversations across that spectrum as well, if that answers it. But yeah, I think it's just about trying to really have a clear focus and really educate and get everyone bought into that.
Fantastic, Jason. Paul, is there anything that kind of stands out for you that's worked within the Birkin Group to help foster that culture?
Yeah, look, it's the old adage around what gets measured gets managed. You know, the being honest and open with your measurement and actually having that data available and actually sharing that with, you know, initially where there was this fear factor, oh, we can't show people that. Oh, no, oh, actually, what happens if, you know, one of my competitors fight? No, we are where we are. Just own it, deal with it, and move forwards. And I would say, let's say, my team at every level, the way in which they respond and get involved and have a genuine passion for that is really changed. You can see how this is happening at all levels. And actually, I would say I've seen a massive difference over the last 3 to 4 years in terms of it is expected from a leadership team now to show genuine purpose. You know, what are we doing? Why are we doing what we do? What is the reason behind it? You know, what are the good things? How will we give him back? And we come back to what Alan was saying around the tendering. Yeah, I mean, you know, again, I know if I speak to any of my peers, we're all in the same boat. The expectation, the challenge that has been put upon us now is significantly higher. And you're right, 30%, I would say, is at least the scoring now in ESG related. And I would say environmentally, we've come a long way as an industry. Social it's really exciting to see how much more social drive there is from a sustainability now in terms of giving back to local communities and how we are supporting, how we are doing good business. So yeah, no, it's engagement at all levels. And it's about sharing knowledge and sharing data and kind of showing people progress.
Brilliant, thank you. And it's so refreshing to hear a business owner talking about that openness. I think it's fantastic, and we need to drive that forward. I'm actually going to pick up a question from the floor. So from Monday, and I think I'm going to come to you for this, Alan. I know Paul, I think, mentioned it while we've been chatting. I've heard a lot about greenwashing. Can you explain to the audience what this is?
Yeah, great question. So it's a very important topic because greenwashing, or as it's also now being referred to as green wishing, is something that is an easy trap to fall into. People want to promote themselves and their actions in the most successful way, and to make sure that people see that they're taking lots of action, and all of that's great, but it's also key in terms of the credibility and the transparency of what you're doing to make sure that you're evidencing what you're doing and going about it in the right way. So you know, a long time ago, I remember seeing a claim come out from a very large supermarket about achieving, you know, complete carbon neutrality. And the reality was it was actually only for scope 1 and 2. Scope 3 hadn't even been started yet. So, you know, it was a very easy sort of indicator to correct that, but probably purely because they weren't necessarily even realizing the extent of the claim that they were making, that actually that puts them in a slightly awkward position. So it's about following a best practice, making sure it's third-party verified so that you're on the right lines and you're staying within the lines, and being very clear on what you're doing. You know, Paul mentioned a great point, is that, you know, people often thought, you know, what are they going to find? You know, if they do an assessment, how bad is it going to be? And the reality is, wherever you are, that's the starting point. Let's now take action, but do it with our eyes open so that we understand what can be done. What are your options? How successful can you be? So going about it in the right way, but communicating it in the right way is what is the, you know, what I would recommend is the best way to combat any sort of greenwashing.
Brilliant, thank you, Alan. And I think that's kind of really important. It's that whole knowledge thing, isn't it? And again, it came up in Jason's Lloyds Bank's report around people not feeling they know where to go for the knowledge. So again, hopefully through seminars like this and webinars like this, that we can kind of spread that word that actually there are places, there are consultants, there's people out there to help. So thank you, Alan. That was fantastic. Jason, what should SME businesses prioritise as they look to become more sustainable?
I think fundamentally, just try and have a plan. So I think I said at the start of my presentation that, you know, there'll be so I think that's fundamentally got to be the key area is trying to have a plan. And so whether you're just starting off or you know you're on a sort of a further part of that journey, you know, if you're starting off, I think start small. It can be quite daunting, which we've obviously said, so much information, but I think the key thing is just to start somewhere. So I'd say start small. If you're already on that journey, I'd think about how can you improve, you know, how can you continuously improve? So doing that by learning maybe from peers, learning from other organisations, as we spoke about today, other support available. And I think the three key areas I would probably say to prioritise would probably be thinking about a bit like Lloyds, as I mentioned, sort of energy efficiency is probably one you can start quite easily, thinking about outputs of the business. Then maybe waste reduction, the outputs linked to that and the operations. And then I'd say financial planning. So again, we spoke about it, you know, there are challenges, it might be costly, but how can you navigate that? So is it around, you know, is there going to be a cost? Can you streamline? Can you change something? And or if it is going to be an outlay, you know, what support is available? Is that from your banker, from grants available? So yeah, I think they're the three areas I would say.
Brilliant, thanks, Jason. Absolutely, it's that key area, isn't it? Is planning this stuff, and again, I know I sound like a broken record, but it's getting the support, getting the expertise around you, and getting that solid plan, because this stuff can work. Alan, you touched on it in your presentation around the business opportunities of it. It's not just about doing something to do the right thing, which is absolutely right, but actually there are real opportunities to a business, and that continued growth for a business.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also, I mean, it can be a daunting challenge, factoring in the cost of taking action. But the reality is the cost of not taking action is actually more serious. You know, as we said before, you know, people have an expectation now. Customers have an expectation. They also need support. And that's actually what's driving change far quicker than legislation. You know, legislation captures certain companies of a certain size, and that's obviously going to increase and trickle down and capture more and more organizations. We're already seeing that. But the reality is far more organizations are now understanding that they have to provide more value and more support to whoever they're providing a service for, because they're under pressure to report on their footprint, and the bulk of those emissions are totally outside of their control. So that's a clear opportunity. If you are the business that gives that support, you are going to be relied upon, and you know, most of your clients will need that support. But the reality is they can't get it without you, because they don't understand, they have no operational or financial control over what you do for them. So if you recognize that challenge and say, we are taking the action that we're taking in order to provide a better service for you, so that you understand that, then if there's a cost associated with that, and it's built into your costing model and therefore part of how you operate and how you charge, actually that's a cost neutral approach to achieving ultimately what you need to achieve.
Brilliant, thank you, Alan. And that kind of leads me into a question from Steve. I might come to you for your experience on this, Paul, initially. And we've already kind of touched on the fact that this stuff, as you said, can be cost neutral. But the question goes: do you think customers are willing to pay a premium for sustainably produced goods, and how can businesses effectively market this?
Honest answer. Do I feel they're prepared to pay more? No. It's weird. It's a weird dilemma, because ultimately I would say clients are so much more aware and genuinely trying to do the right thing from a purchasing decision. Do they have extra money? Possibly not. I think what is really important is if you are proposing something that is genuinely sustainable and has all of the right benefits, I think being clear around the tangibles of that is really important, because, you know, from experience, we've been able to harness the impact of technology to deliver the sustainable impact that we're looking for. And that's how we've been able to mitigate the cost, by accepting certain circumstances that may not always be possible. But we will always try and harmonize by doing that. So if something is more expensive, we will be transparent around why it's more expensive, but we will go above and beyond to look at ways to either increase productivity or do things different. So I would say there are certain clients out there where they do have ESG budgets. And again, one of the things that we learn as well is if you go and ask for and try and sell something to a client and you're trying to position it as, in our industry, cleaning, they'll go, no, my budget's this, that's what it is. If I go and talk to them about environmental or social or governance and the benefits that it can bring to them strategically, that is a very different proposition. And they will typically have different funds and different pots and different budgets available to utilize on something that qualifies under an ESG banner. So maybe I'm contradicting myself, but it will depend on what they're obviously purchasing, and it will depend on the impact of what it is that they're doing. But I would say really just stop, have a think about what it is that you're offering, and then just have you really covered all the bases on it.
Brilliant. And this is possibly, I'm a little bit conscious of time. This is possibly a bigger question, but is it a dangerous area to be in where we're assuming that a sustainably produced item has to be more expensive, or should we be coming at it from an angle of going, well, actually, because of cost savings that we can make, actually we don't need to charge a premium? Not in every case, obviously, but a case in point being that may be possible.
Yeah, I mean, certainly from what we're seeing and what we're doing, us walking the walk, we don't see sustainability as an opportunity to increase our prices. We are just trying to do good business. And I think what we've got in our favor is because of the way we're deploying the tech, that is giving us the productivity gains we need. Where it's maybe an environment where we can't use the tech as to quite so much effect. Overall, I would say the business, are we spending more on products than we used to? No. We're certainly spending a lot less on travel. We are a far more efficient business. I think some of that's the hangover from COVID in terms of people being more aware of agile. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still, as much as I love tech, there's no substitute for being face-to-face with someone. There isn't. But, do you have to be face-to-face with them all the time, using that to greater effect? Listening to some of the ideas from our team, we've been doing live broadcasting for training, all sorts of things. But there's so many ways in which you can reduce your impact on the planet while still delivering great service. I hand on heart believe that. I really do.
Brilliant. Thank you, Paul. Right. I've got one more question, which I'm going to direct to each of you individually. I'm a little bit conscious that I kind of want to wrap this up, so I'm going to kind of try and ask you to answer a question within inside of a kind of 60 seconds or so.
I will try.
Alan, can I come to you first? What trends is Nitrile Carbon Zone seeing in the market at the moment, and how do you see changes continuing over the next 12-18 months?
So as quickly as I can, I think the biggest change is the appetite for detail. So there are so many more questions that simply weren't ever being asked before that are now being asked. And there's a level of expectation from a customer to the supplier for them to help them on their journey to net zero. So when I award this contract, how are you going to help me achieve my aspirations? And that's really where we're seeing a big change. And that's where the detail comes in, the understanding the specifics. How can you boil that down? How can you report back to your clients in a client specific way? So there's not just an overall, oh, we're doing some great things. This is the impact of that site or that contract or that amount of spend. It's breaking it down in a way that is relevant and detailed so that people can use that to take action and make decisions on. So yeah, the level of expectation and detail is where I see it only increasing from where we are now.
Brilliant. Thank you, Alan. Jason, market trends that you're seeing?
Tough question. I think probably what I could say that we've seen myself personally over the last few years is definitely that acceleration. Customers definitely getting more involved and understanding the real reasons and impacts of sustainability. So yeah, I think that's just gonna evolve really, and I guess what business doesn't want to get is left behind. So if you're an SME business, you might think this isn't important for me right now, but actually before you know it, it could be very much so. So I think that's the risk I would say, you know, make sure that you are on that journey. I've said it a few times. I'm going to bang on it again. You know, if you haven't started, start off small. You know, that's something I would really say just to do. But I would say that, you know, we're seeing a lot more businesses getting savvy and obviously understanding the risks and the benefits, I guess. But yeah, if you haven't, I'd say get on that journey today, and also use the support available. You know, there's a lot of knowledgeable people around, not just banks. You know, Alan, Paul, you know, yourself as accountancy firms. There's a lot of people out there that have, you know, really can support. So I'd just say, final point, yeah, make sure you're not on your own. Look for support around to help.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jason. And final comments from you, Paul?
Yeah. Okay. Trends certainly massively increased client expectation, the need for transparency in data, that just more and more, the ability to interface with their systems. What Alan, you know, like Alan said, I would say within your own or within our own businesses and speaking to peers, the trend is there is far more buy-in, genuine commitment, interest, engagement around having an impact. And I would say the attitude of clients is, you know, we're seeing it across all sectors now, where there is just, you know, there is a genuine want to do the right thing. So regardless of whether their budgets can allow it or not, I don't know any of my clients that don't want to make a positive difference on an ESG level. So yeah, that's
fantastic. Thank you, Paul. And that's so refreshing. And I think for me, from today, the level of input we've had, the attendees, the questions, and I do apologise to those people that have put questions that we haven't managed to get to. We'll see what we can do post webinar around that. I think that interaction does go to shout that this is important, and people are coming around to that. And it's really nice. And I hope we've been able to demonstrate today that there is support out there and real benefits to beginning this journey. Look, I'm going to begin to wrap it up now. Massive thank you to my panelists today. It's been fantastic. I've really enjoyed it. As I say, I hope people have found it insightful. Post event, there'll be some stuff on our social media around this. There is a recording of the webinar, the slides, etc., will be available on our website. And as I say, we'll see what we can do around those questions that we haven't managed to get a chance to talk about today. So with that, that's everything from me. Again, massive thank you to the panelists. Massive thank you to the attendees for joining us. Hope it's been useful, and keep an eye out for our next session. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.